What's going on, fellow A-plusers? It's your boy Adam Perez, back once again with a brand new review as we're set to finally dive into The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power series. Currently over on Amazon Prime. They debuted last Friday with a 2-episode premiere. So episodes 1 and 2 are certainly out, and we're going to be talking about both of them for you guys here. I do apologize for the late dropping of this review. They will be coming out a lot closer to the actual episode debuts themselves. But look, my mom's been in town, getting the opportunity to visit me along with my baby boy Noah once again, so got to spend some family time together, and so I've had a pretty busy schedule, to certainly say the least. But after this week, guys, I can promise you we will be on time with our Lord of the Rings review. So let's go ahead and get into it, man. You know, for those of you who are unaware, the Rings of Power series takes place during the Second Age of Middle-earth. For those of you who would also like to know, when it comes to the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy, that is in fact set in the Third Age of Middle-earth, just to kind of give you guys an idea of what the timeline is like. There are a very few characters that I think, at least within the first 2 episodes, that we've been introduced to, that we've seen before in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and that is in fact Galadriel, an elf, along with Elrond, an elf as well. And so those two probably seem extremely familiar, but we also have to take into consideration this is thousands of years before we even see them in the Lord of the Rings trilogy itself. So pretty cool that we do get ourselves some focus on those characters, and it does seem as though while Galadriel seems to be maybe one of the main characters along with Elrond, they definitely do have quite a few characters that they seemingly are focusing their story on. We've got a Harfoot by the name of Nori that comes across a gentleman from the stars, if you will. We'll talk a little bit about him. There's also another elf that's been sort of at a watchtower looking over the world of man, if you will. His name is Arondir. So it'll be interesting to see how his story certainly goes, as it seems as though he's involved with a human female that has a son by the name of Theo, that seemingly by the end of episode 2 has certainly found himself in a much bigger world that he's clearly not ready for, as he winds up discovering a very broken and battered sword, which I'm kind of under the impression that this sword might have belonged to Sauron, or maybe one of Sauron's compatriots. Only thing that I can tell is that it's got the Sauron sort of symbol on there as well, so it's definitely calling to him. I mean, we even saw like blood being drawn out of his hand towards the end to kind of activate the Sauron symbol, maybe help the sword even grow a little bit more as well. So it seems as though Theo is definitely being sucked into the darkness. So we'll definitely have to see how that storyline progresses. But I gotta be honest with you, first 2 episodes in, I like it. I love this world of Middle-earth in general. So for those of you who don't know my story when it comes to Lord of the Rings, I do remember being maybe in like 6th, 7th grade, my father trying to get me to read The Hobbit. Wasn't happening at a young age like that. The Hobbit was just such an incredibly difficult book for me at that age to even pick up and understand what was going on. And it really wasn't until the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring movie released, I wind up seeing it in movies first, and it really opened my eyes to, man, this is a world that I really would love to kind of dive into a little bit more. And so I actually went ahead and picked up the Lord of the Rings trilogy, read the entire trilogy before even getting to the release of the Two Towers and Return of the King, and loved reading the book, and loved seeing what Peter Jackson did with the return of Lord of the Rings trilogy. Never went back to, unfortunately, read the Hobbit book, so I'm not one to say that I'm like a Tolkien purist or anything like that. Really, the Lord of the Rings is really the only Tolkien that I have certainly read, but I am familiar at least with the idea that he has written more. There's plenty more to the history of Middle-earth, whether that that be from his book, The Silmarillion? I probably completely butchering the name of it. I have no idea. Maybe even in some of the appendixes from the Lord of the Rings trilogy and things like that. So there's definitely a ton of history out there to be explored, and I'm glad that we get the opportunity to dive back into the world of Middle Earth, because I'm a big fan of fantasy. You give me dragon, elves, knights, whatever, hobbits. I'll take little people all day. Assassins, whatever the case you might have. I absolutely love being thrusted into the world of Middle Earth. And I know some people might say, oh, it's just a knockoff, maybe Game of Thrones, or they're trying to copy Game of Thrones success, and so now they want to do a television series. I really do see them as two completely different worlds and two completely different environments. So you'll never see me here comparing the two, if you will. House of the Dragon has its own tone, its own aesthetics that work for what it's trying to accomplish, and the Middle Earth has already very much been established for a very long time, and that's just a world that I really enjoy exploring. And one of the aspects about this series so far that I enjoyed, first and foremost, I love the beginning here in the sense of establishing the lore and the myth, or the mythology, if you will, of Middle Earth, and especially the elves, right? Getting the opportunity to see the elves in their homeland. I almost forgot, or maybe didn't even realize, the fact that they came from one homeland at one point in time. We clearly see here in the story that they faced an evil threat, a darkness as well, by the name of Morgoth. Clearly it wind up running them from their land after their land was certainly destroyed or in the battle. And they take their fight, if you will, over to Middle Earth, and wind up practically almost destroying Middle Earth in their battle as well. I love the intensity. I love the storytelling that they provide in here to really set the groundwork for that. After that particular battle, it took centuries not only to rebuild Middle Earth, but for Middle Earth to kind of grow back, if you will. And the idea of somebody like Galadriel, whose brother fought in the war against Sauron and Morgoth and things like that, being killed by Sauron, and her sort of picking up her brother's mantle, picking up where her brother left off in an attempt to hunt down Sauron, because after the huge battle, clearly darkness creeps back into the caves and hides, if you will, to go ahead and rehabilitate, maybe come up with a new plan, lick its wounds, sort of thing. And it's somebody like Galadriel that knows that the threat and the darkness is still out there, even though it's been quiet. And when you have peace, when you have quiet, people unfortunately do get blind to outside threats that certainly still might be there. And it's interesting in the world of like elves and the idea of them living for such a long period of time, right? Like her hunt clearly went on for centuries. And when you think about like her companions and the people that were that were with her on this hunt, it's almost like, bro, I probably would have dropped out like year 20. Like, all right, I'm done. We haven't found anything. But to kind of see the elves literally like watching her back for hundreds of years and still maybe not necessarily finding what they're looking for, I can understand people maybe turning their backs on her when she really does need them the most. And it did feel very much like while Galadriel was maybe not finding anything, there's always a part of me that thinks like, man, she's so close. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's so close to discovering the truth of the fact that there is certainly something still out there. And it's just unfortunate that, people want to continue to belittle her, tell her the threat's over, right? Not that she's crazy or anything, but maybe she certainly has overstayed her welcome and the king's patience, certainly all at the same time. And I don't even know if it's a sense of like, hey, we need to shut up Galadriel. Let's just, praise her for her accomplishes and then just get her out of the way, right? Like, let's send her off. We'll play it up as, hey, the king is offering you this peace. You can go back to our homeland and live the rest of your years in bliss, whatever the case may be. To me, it almost felt like, all right, this is a form of trying to shut her up or get her out of the way because she's been driving the king crazy with this nonsense of evil still out there and knowing that it's not. When in reality, it definitely is. And we clearly get to see that darkness creeping back up here within the first 2 episodes. But I really enjoyed the Galadriel character in here. I really do. I love seeing that at some point in time, she certainly was a warrior. She got herself right into the thick of things, can clearly handle herself. And I do find it fascinating to see what her journey is going to be, because this Galadriel that we have in here is vastly different than what Peter Jackson certainly presented it to us. But that's understandable, right? Because people grow, people go through experiences in life. And when you're literally talking about thousands of years of an elf life, I feel like elves at some point could accomplish anything, right? Do anything that they want to for 50 years here, 70 years here, 100 years here. And you look at what their life is going to be like thousands of years from now. I can see how Galadriel in the trilogy has the standing among the elves as she certainly does. And I do think that this is going to be a really great adventure and a way to kind of show what Galadriel will eventually build up to in her time. And so I really was impressed with the actress in here, and I even really appreciated the friendship, or at least the bond that we have between Galadriel and Elrond, something that does carry over into the trilogy as well. But pretty fascinating stuff when it comes to her. One of the things that was interesting too, when they are sending her off to the Grey Haven, there, she's sailing into the sunset. I wonder if this is the same place that even like Frodo at the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy was being sent on to, or even like Bilbo Baggins at the end of his days. So I am curious if that's where they were going. The fact that it's a big shiny light, I'm always suspicious of it. I'm like, are you really taking me back to my main island, or am I just walking to the light to my demise, to my end, right? Like, is there really nothing on the other end of that, or is it like a special portal, sort of like how Wonder Woman's Themyscira Island is hidden between mist sort of thing, and you go in and then that's where the beautiful land is certainly at? I wonder if that's the same situation, but the threat that's out there was certainly still enough for Galadriel to realize maybe they're just trying to shut me up. There's something out there. I know there is. And the fact that she steps off the boat and literally tries to swim back to land, or hoping that she would swim back to land before she came across the salvage ship, or the shipwreck ship, I should say. I did find that a very interesting and a very important part in Galadriel's life, because had she gone through it, right, we would not have her or her story to certainly tell later on in the Middle-earth history. So really great stuff in here. I am fascinated to kind of see what's going to happen with Galadriel certainly going forward. But good stuff overall. I'm just trying to check my notes here real quick and see what else we certainly might be having. But yeah, we'll see how it goes when it comes to Galadriel. But great performances all around so far. When it comes to the Elrond character, I do think I'm going to really enjoy him. I am curious to see how he's going to build up not only his sort of city or the dwellings of where he's at when it comes to the elves, but kind of seeing his involvement in maybe the building of Middle-earth after everything. I do find it interesting the king suggesting him to work with Lord Celebrimbor, if I'm not mistaken. It was a really weird elvish name that I wasn't super familiar with, but this feels like it already connects to the bigger trilogy in the sense that he's going to be Elrond's clearly going to be helping him build towers around Middle-earth, and one of those particular towers is going to have a forge pretty much hot enough, the dragon's breath, like hot enough to go ahead and forge anything. And when I think of that, when you say the word forge and you say the word tower, the first thing that comes to my mind, rings. And so I do wonder if how Sauron goes about forging the rings in here. When the title of the series is the Rings of Power, I do wonder if maybe season 1 ends with the creation of maybe the first ring. But it feels like this is Elrond's story is definitely putting things into motion in order to go ahead and not only create the towers, but possibly creating the forge that will create the ring itself. Even seeing his idea to work outside of his own personal race in order to get people to build these towers, because for some reason, and I do wonder if there's a reason why Celebrimbor wants to build the tower so quickly. He's like, look, let's do this in springtime. It doesn't feel like it's a year away, and when he says something like that, it feels like he's only got like a couple months to do it, and you're really looking at a huge army or in a huge group of people to kind of put that together and leave it up to Elrond to decide, maybe we shouldn't just leave this up to the elves. Maybe we should really bring somebody in. And this is where we get introduced to Prince. Is it Prince or is it King? Hold on one second. Let me look through my Lord. I'm sorry. It's another Lord. Lord Durin. Really great relationship. I'm always a fan of the relationships between dwarves and elves just because of the animosity between those two, as far back as it certainly does go. So to kind of see them actually have a friendship to a certain extent was pretty appealing to me, especially when you finally get the opportunity to meet like Durin's wife and his kids and things like that. I really love just the table setting in that family environment of having Elrond come in for dinner. But what's fascinating between their relationship, though, the friction that we see between Lord Durin along with Elrond, the fact that Elrond hasn't been around for 20 years. And it is interesting from Durin's point of view. It's like 20 years is a big deal for somebody like me. Like, I know it's a blink of an eye for you elves and you don't even realize that time flies by for you guys that quickly. But for us, like, that's like a quarter of somebody's life. You know what I mean? In some circumstances. So to not have been around and realize that he's missed the wedding, he's missed the birth of his two kids and things like that, to see that somebody like a dwarf like Durin to be in his feelings and to kind of be hurt. I think we think of dwarves as like steel and not really the emotional type, but you really see like what his friendship with Elrond meant, the fact that he hadn't seen Elrond in such a long time and really harbored some animosity towards this man, even putting him up to this challenge and stuff that we see when he's in the dwarven caves. So I thought that was actually pretty eye-opening to kind of see how Lord Durin wind up handling Elrond's 20-year absence. But again, it's almost like once he gets invited to dinner, once you get the wife who absolutely loves him and wants to bring him back in, it almost feels like it's just a family environment again. Like these two will heal their wounds and they're just going to end up being friends again at some particular point in time. What I was not expecting and what I am kind of curious to find out, though, is what exactly is it that Lord Durin, along with his father, have found or built or created? Who knows? But the fact that his father thinks Elrond is there, that it's just so conspicuous of a timing that, oh, now he shows up after we've maybe discovered this power source or created this sort of thing. I do find it interesting that they did not show us what it was that was inside of that chest. So I'm not expecting it to be a ring that's forged or anything like that. And maybe it is, but I am kind of curious as to what it is that the dwarves wind up actually discovering here, and if it's something that we've seen maybe in the Hobbit trilogy or even in the Lord of the Rings trilogy itself. So again, we've kind of already seen connective tissues, but I'm pretty sure we're going to certainly see more. And it hasn't felt very forced at all. It doesn't feel fan servicey at all to me. It definitely just feels like the progress of Tolkien's story, and I'm definitely here for it. I do want to talk a little bit about the elf in Elrond, who apparently has been watching over this city. I'm trying to see if I put the name of this city in my notes. I don't believe that I put the name of the city that he's at. Oh, Horden. Wait, is it Horden? No, I think Horden is the name of the city that he travels to. But I did not write the name of... did I? Tir-Hadir, I think is the name of the city. I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, guys. I don't speak Elvish or Middle Earthian, so I might be butchering some of these names or not writing them down. But apparently this guy has been at the watch post watching over the world of men and these cities. Apparently when it comes to the bigger war that they had centuries ago, it was men that picked up the fight to fight alongside Morgoth, the enemy of the elves and things like that. So, the elves already have this mentality about who the humans are. And even the Watchtower Ward that speaks with Elrond in here when he says, listen, our time at these posts are over. Right? It's peace in the world again. The war is officially over. Galadriel's back. She couldn't find shit, right? We're living in a time of peace. No need to go ahead and use this outpost anymore. but he's very particular to point out, like, while you've been watching over them for 79 years, make no mistake, that darkness that they had centuries ago is still in their blood somewhere, right? Like, it's still deep down inside, and if you give them a chance, they may turn on us certainly once again. And I feel like that's a repeating sort of theme when it comes to the world of humans, that they're just very much easily corruptible. You know what I mean? Always wanting power over anything else, and power corrupts absolutely. And so that feels like a very much overall theme. And it's just interesting to me to see some humans in here. Like, there was when Arondir goes into town, and first off, I looked at my girlfriend, and as he's walking into the city, I'm like, man, him being an elf is already tough work for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's an elf in a human world. It's already tough. And then he takes off the cloak, and I'm like, and he's a black elf too. Like, he double hard time for this poor guy. He can't even mingle with people properly without them staring at him. Like, what are you doing in here? So Arondir is definitely taking it tough. But I found it pretty interesting when he goes to the bar, and there's one of the kids in there that just immediately gets frustrated with him because of the fact that he's asking questions, right? And he says, you need to, and he says, when are you people gonna get over it? Talking to Arondir, he says, and stop lumping us in with those that came before. And I got to admit, man, he even says, and then Arondir replies, the past is with us, whether we like it or not. And when he says that, look, I don't know if that's a phrase that Tolkien wrote in a book, but I always feel like when it comes to Tolkien's world of Middle Earth, even though it is a fantasy world, there's so many incredible like parallels, I feel like, to our world, right? Because when I get this particular scene, and I don't know if this scene was put in there to be as part of like a social commentary on the society that we currently live in today. I know this is a fantasy world, don't get me wrong, right? But there is something out there about people wanting to sort of forget their past and move on, in the sense, without talking about it, right? Or at least discussing it. It's just almost like, let's just put blinders on. It happened, we all agree, but let's not talk about it and just move forward. And that's just not true healing. And I feel like we see that in our society and in certain aspects also. But I do think Arondir nails it right on the head when he says the past is with us whether we like it or not. So the idea of having these talks, having these conversations, that's the only way that we're gonna heal. And it's not so much like, I don't think Arondir puts the weight of the past culture on the current culture. I think it's probably more or less the elves that he knows of, right? Those at the Watchtower that still feel some type of way, that might be certainly carrying that on. And so when it comes to our society, it is one of those things like, I don't blame anybody currently for the issues that we had in the past, but the idea of not addressing it and just thinking that the past can't come back, or that we can't repeat the same mistakes, that I think is dangerous, because the past is always going to be with us. So we need to talk about it at some point in time. And so I really love that brief scene that we got from Arondir in here, because for me, it just felt very parallel to the world that we're currently living. But I do leave that up to just Tolkien and just the world that he's created in Middle Earth. Probably with that in mind, of Earth, but just in a fantasy realm, if you will. But what's interesting to me is Arondir seemingly has feelings for a female in here, a human female by the name of Bronwyn. Bronwyn does have a son. The father is not in the picture. I believe he's been mentioned in this by Theo's friend. But it feels like either he doesn't know who his father is, or his father abandoned him maybe at a very early age, or maybe when he was born, sort of thing, right? So there is a cloud over Theo's head of uncertainty when it comes to his dad. There's kind of a part of me that believes if Arondir has been watching over this place for the past 79 years, and clearly there's a relationship between him and Bronwyn, because you can feel the intensity anytime, right? And she's like, tell me what you need to say. Look, girl, look, He's like, I almost wanted him to just pull her close. Look, woman, I've been telling you how I feel about you in so many ways without actually saying the words. Like he clearly loves and cares about this woman. And there's a part of me, and even the girlfriend called this out, was like, I wonder if Theo is their son. And the fact that people might look at them differently or not approve of it, maybe that's why nobody's told Theo the truth. And maybe one of the reasons why Elrond continues to come back over and over again to not only see her, but maybe check up on Theo. I don't know. That's just speculation on my part. But I do find it rather fascinating, to certainly say the least. But we do see that he winds up going on an adventure in here, which did make me scratch my head because he realizes something's going on over in Horden. And he's like, look, I got to check it out. This could be an emergency. The fact that Bronwyn literally ups and leaves with him. I'm going to go with you. I'm thinking, girl, you got Theo. Like, you got a kid you got to take care of and provide for. You can't just up and leave this kid. Like, you have anybody watching him? And the moment she leaves, Theo winds up getting into trouble. I don't know whose barn he went into. I don't know how he knew about this treasure that was under this man's sort of flooring, if you will. But Theo goes into the barn and winds up finding a sword that I got to assume once belonged to Sauron himself. It's got his emblem on it, or at least somebody close to Sauron, and now he's carrying it around, and I would assume, if anything, it'll probably start drawing that darkness from Theo, as clearly the sword is in fact rebuilding itself. Whether or not he's gonna end up turning into like this vessel for Sauron to maybe see things through, or see through his eyes, that I don't know. But I think Theo is going to be on a very interesting path, certainly going forward. And so is Elrond, as he winds up getting captured at the end of these episodes as well. So I don't have no idea what's going to happen or what his fate is certainly going to be. And last but not least, I do want to wrap up on the mysterious man from the stars. We get the Harfoot character by the name of Nori, along with his sister. They see a shooting star in the sky, something like a meteor crashing into Earth. She's not the only one that's seen it. Several other people have definitely seen it. So I am kind of curious if other people are going to start like trying to find out exactly what that was, or come to, I believe the Harfoots have migrated, if I'm not mistaken. I believe after that event, they're either thinking about migrating or they have migrated already. But the real thing here is that Nori comes across a mysterious man from the stars. We don't know who this is, but this person clearly has powers. I believe when he holds her hand and then he touches the rock, you get to see the rocks levitating. So he's got some sort of abilities. He's even talking to the animals in the whispers. We see him talking to some fireflies. But his powers seem to kind of come with a balance, if you will. It seems like there's a little bit of light, yet a little bit of dark included in there, right? When he shouts, things get kind of darker around him. We saw after he spoke with the fireflies, they all wind up dying, and after he winds up using them, sort of thing. So I do wonder if there is some sort of weird balance between light and dark. And when I see him, for some reason, my mind goes to Gandalf. So if I had to make an assumption, again, I don't know how long wizards live for. I gotta think that Gandalf has lived several different lives, or has been around long enough to see how Middle Earth is shaped. And so I do wonder if this is sort of an origin story for Gandalf. If not Gandalf, the other suggestion was maybe Saruman, who was played by Christopher Lee in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Or maybe another wizard that we've just never been introduced to. If it is any three of those, I do find that fascinating that they come from the stars. That technically, I feel like that would make Gandalf or Saruman or any of these other wizards like alien beings, if you will. Because one of the things we pick up on is this mysterious man is carving out these different symbols that we're unaware of, until the fireflies really start making out constellations with them, showcasing them sort of as stars. So I do wonder wonder I do wonder if all the symbols he's writing gives a better idea of a location where he comes from. My head immediately went to like Stargate, thinking maybe if we can get 7 constellation symbols and we could put them all together, then we'll zero in on the planet that this gentleman came from. But I don't know if that's the route that they're going or not. But I do find it interesting that we literally have a man from space that has landed here on Middle Earth. And I'm like, aliens in a Tolkien story? Hey, I'll take it. They may not consider them aliens, or maybe they will eventually consider their aliens wizards because they have these supernatural powers and gifts. But look, overall, do I think that this 2 episodes were perfect? No, I don't. If I had to literally grade them, I probably would give them a B plus, if you will. I did have some issues with maybe some of the editing choices in here, some of the questionable decisions by the characters, like Bronwyn just leaving her kid behind, sort of thing, right? So there are maybe a couple things here that make me scratch my head a little bit. But this is just the beginning of the adventure. I think this has been a really great way of establishing the world that we're in, understanding maybe some of the stakes, or at least slowly building things up. And one of the aspects that I love too is not only the great orc designs in here, but I am a fan of how little of them we kind of see, with the exception of like the beginning to establish the lore and the mythology of the world. We don't really see them at all, it feels like, until the 2nd episode, where they're sort of almost like this myth, right? That they clearly have been in hiding, digging tunnels to get where they certainly need to go, being very incognito, clearly living under the ground, if you will, and nobody really even knows about it. So again, it is this darkness that's lurking, and the appearance of the orc was done beautifully. I mean, the cinematography in here looks great, special effects look great. I would not be surprised if this show is nominated for like costume designs. I mean, you can see exactly where Amazon put their money. And I do think that the storytelling holds up exactly with the amount of money that they put in here. So this is definitely a series I'm going to continue to certainly watch. Very enjoyable, guys. If you have not checked it out, but you have enjoyed the past sort of Lord of the Rings trilogy, I would definitely recommend to certainly go ahead and dive back into this world, because I don't think you'll certainly be disappointed whatsoever. But guys, certainly let me know your thoughts at the end of the day. What did you love about this series so far, 2 episodes in? Anything that you didn't necessarily connect with, definitely go ahead and certainly let me know your thoughts in the live chat or the comment section box below. I do apologize about this being a little bit longer of a video, but again, I'm trying to put in 2 episodes worth of content that we've certainly have checked out so far. But overall, guys, really good series. I highly recommend to check it out for yourself, and we'll definitely be back later on this week. We got episode 3 dropping on Friday. I do have to watch the kiddo by myself mostly on Saturday. So if anything, I'll try and get either an episode recorded Saturday, or maybe dropping sometime for you guys on Sunday. So definitely go ahead and check out for our Ring of Power reviews every weekend after they air on Friday. But until next time, guys, that's going to do it for me here. But I'll certainly be back next time. But in the meantime, do me a big favor. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.